Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live from the Table. I'm here all alone today. I didn't even have Dan or Periel to introduce our guest. I think it's his third time on the show, Richard Hanania. What's your current intro, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a writer. I'm on Substack. I'm on Twitter. People can Google my name, or they can search in Substack, or they can search in Twitter. I'm there. There's no fancy trimmings on it.
And you're trying to get off Twitter, right? Are you on Blue Sky as well?
No, I've never. I complain about Twitter. It probably sounds like I'm trying to get off Twitter. I'd like to get to the point one day where I don't need it. I feel like it keeps me in the conversation. It still draws a lot of people to the more substantive work, which I appreciate.
Mhm.
A lot of kind of discourse shaping things that I've said have started off on Twitter. So I don't feel like I can get off it, but I recognize it's a kind of a terrible force on our society.
It is. Um, I, uh, I thought I read somewhere that you said you were trying to build your Substack so you could get the hell off Twitter because essentially for what you just said. So let's just talk about a few things. By the way, I would just add to the introduction that I think you're one of the world's most interesting people with one of the most interesting and active minds. You find something like nuggets in almost any subject matter to talk about. And at the same time, you're not too highbrow for a man of your intellect. You still will comment on an attractive woman on Twitter almost to finally. You're married, right? How does your wife feel about all the your ogling?
Yeah, it's a job. She does. She understands.
She understands. Do so Richard will tweet, like hot women, or he'll tweet a hot woman like
We're more clever than that. I don't just tweet hot women. There's usually some kind of
yeah.
commentary
I was gonna
associated
say,
with it.
yeah, you panicked. Let me finish. Like you're like some woman saying something like silly or something, and well, you want to describe what your angle is on the hot chicks?
Well, there's a few of them. Look, it is good for kind of engagement. So I'm not above, as people sometimes are engagement farmers. They're just lying or making things up or provoking people for no reason. I'm against that, but something that's relatively harmless or even has a point that gets engagement. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So the most famous thing I just was once tweeted out when Sydney Sweeney was on SNL like 3 years ago. I tweeted out wokeness is dead. I
Yeah.
believe that was it, just those three words. It's still, I believe, the most viewed tweet of all time. It was got like 67 million views. It was like a Super Bowl ad. It inspired like dozens of think pieces, and this was a precursor to this latest jeans controversy with Sydney Sweeney. I started the whole Sydney Sweeney as a this right wing figure. So that's like one of those cases like that. There's or other ones will be like a woman will be like giving dating advice or something like that, and I'll comment on it, or I'll comment on interactions between men and women, which is fun. I did with my friend Rob Henderson. There was this video of this woman on like TikTok who went around and hit on men and said, you're cute, just as a kind of social experiment to see what would happen. And we would watch how the men would react. And this was fascinating. I mean, kids these days, you've seen all the charts, I'm sure. They don't even go outside. They don't drink. They don't ask anyone on dates. They don't hang out at the mall. It's really, really terrible. And so in addition to the political commentary, I'm trying to, reverse these negative social trends.
Well, I did see. This is obviously not what we're going to talk about, but I did see for some reason it sticks in my mind. There was some Israeli woman, doing some sort of video, and she had huge
Yeah.
breasts. And I thought the reason you retweeted her was because of her. How do you pronounce the word? Physiognomy? What's the word?
No,
That
physiognomy is the face.
Oh, physiognomy is the face.
Yeah, they say
Okay.
like you look like something or other. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah, but yeah, we know what you're saying. Yeah, she was like selling cell phones. It was in Hebrew. It wasn't subtitled. I had no idea what she was saying. Probably buy this nice cell phone. Yeah, and I think I tweeted. I don't remember what I tweeted. It might have been something like "protect our greatest ally" or something like that. And yeah, I mean that's one of the lesser, less substantive ones.
what I like about it is that you are puncturing the pretense that this isn't the intention. Like we're all supposed to pretend we don't notice, or that's not the reason she's on. You're like, come on, who are we kidding here, right? And
Yeah,
that
yeah, it'll be some like banal thing some woman is doing, and she's obviously trying to get attention. There's this woman on TikTok. My God, she has like this giant. she has her breasts out, like just completely like exposed, and she's in her car, and she's like she's talking about like what's it like picking up kids from the line at school, and this is like her TikTok, and sometimes she'll be like, "Well, dads will like look at me," and like she's shocked, right? Like a lot of like Twitter content is this stuff, and it's kind of fun to make fun of.
All right, so let's take. I just love to get your views on things. Lately, I wanted to talk to you about Israel, but lately you've been having Michael Tracy on your show, Michael Tracy, who was a wrecking ball against RussiaGate years ago, one of the first and most effective debunkers of that story, and he is taking a wrecking ball to the Jeffrey Epstein story, such that even the little bits of it that I did think I believed, I no longer believed. So, what's your overall take on this? Like, what of that story do you think is even true?
Yeah, so the Epstein story has a series of things one can believe, from the crimes he was accused of to this idea that he was a Israeli spy or some kind of spy, blackmailing famous men by putting them in compromising situations with underage girls. And I think that like that stuff, I didn't realize how thinly sourced the more
Right, how
extreme.
flimsy it is.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize how thinly sourced. So they come from basically the only idea that ever, the only person I think, or one of the only people. There's a handful of people, but the main one that people rely on, and I learned all this from Michael, so this is a credit to him. Virginia Gouffre, basically, was a kind of mentally unstable person. There's a lot of reasons to question her credibility. None of her claims like ever made it to a court. She was even sued by Alan Dershowitz. So she had claimed she had been trafficked to multiple times, and I think she was actually like either 17 or over 18 when this particular
She
woman.
she makes Tara Reid seem like Jean Kirkpatrick.
There's a lot of these, and she's the best of them. There are worse.
Tara Reid, the one who accused Biden of the sexual thing, but she was a
Yeah,
little goofy too, and
yeah,
that was enough to dismiss her completely.
yeah, and this this she, by the way, Dershowitz sued her. She had to go to court. She had to basically settle with him, right? And there's other things like Prince Andrew settled with her. Michael makes the plausible case that like Prince Andrew doesn't want to be dragged in an American court and just paid this woman off. There's a picture of her with Prince Andrew. That's all that we've ever seen. Oh, by the way, when she originally was talking to the press, she got paid by the Daily Mail around like 2010 to talk about her having known Prince Andrew. I don't know if she hooked up with him or whatever, but at the time, like, did not mention like any kind of traffic or like victimizing status. So this story changed over time. Brought up just like kind of the financial incentives involved. Like once you start accusing this guy of, other people are going to come out the woodwork again, usually with very little evidence, particularly for people having relations with people who are not Jeffrey Epstein, right? Like Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, and all that other stuff. And then the idea that Epstein was intelligence, that's the other kind of fascinating, the thing that gets people. The idea that Alex Acosta said that we're going to go easy on him when he was originally charged with trafficking underage girls because he belongs to intelligence. That was like a journalist speaking to someone off the record and reporting it. There's nothing beyond that. And it's become like, well, the media has acknowledged this or that. It's completely an anonymous quote from a news source. He's also done a series of reporting. I mean, you talk about the accusers, talk about the journalists who've got into this stuff, just very, very sloppy people. I mean, one Virginia Brown, he actually, or Julie Brown, he read her book. She was using Virginia Gouffre's, she wrote like a fictional memoir that she was going to sell, that she really later acknowledged was fictional. And then Julie Brown, who's considered a serious journalist, who was like, I think she was on Ross Douthat, she uses it as like a factual source in her own book. And he goes through these journalists one by one. And it's just a beautiful, dissection. I was never interested. I mean, I became interested in Epstein because of all the talk about Trump and what's been going on recently. I hadn't realized I thought like extreme conspiracy theories were probably made up. The people who were spreading this were not people that I thought were generally trustworthy. So I never looked into it. But, but myself, I thought there was something at least there, and there really wasn't.
Yeah, to me, the story is interesting again because of the the cultural fuel of it, which clearly, to a large extent, is the fact that Epstein was Jewish and maybe involved with the Mossad. And as Ian Carroll famously said to Joe Rogan, it's a stain on the Jewish people. And the current cast of characters that's really into this story, Tucker, Daryl Cooper, people like that, obviously that's the catnip aspect of this story to them now. It's that Epstein is part of this Jewish conspiracy that is controlling basically every major story there is, from Ukraine to, I mean, you name it, right? I mean, Candace Owens. I don't know what your comment is on that. That's what disturbs me right now.
Yeah, it's partly it presses a lot of buttons. It's got the anti-Semitism thing. It's got the Israel thing. They're also just obsessed with kind of pedophilia and human trafficking. This goes back to like QAnon becoming a force in sort of MAGA world. Even illegal immigration, which they don't like migration. They'll justify it in terms of human trafficking and like sex slavery and stuff like that, which I think is pretty. I think that's overstated as a factor in immigration. There was this movie, what was it, Sound of Freedom, which was about a guy who apparently went to Latin America and would like save children being trafficked. His story fell apart. I mean, there was a scandal surrounding this guy, but this is really, really kind of catnip, I think, for a lot of people in right wing politics.
Who was it who said recently that the right always needs a pedophilia scandal? Somebody, I heard this, and it's true. Like they always have QAnon. There's always some pedophilia ring. But I don't know if you heard that. Maybe it was Michael Tracy, maybe it was somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, me and Michael have touched on these ideas. Like, there is the pedophile thing is a like deep concern. I mean, the whole QAnon thing was like the world is run. Like, why would this be your theory of the world? It's like they're all pedophiles, and Trump is going to go execute them. I mean, so you have that aspect of it too. You have rich guys. You have like Democrats like Bill Clinton. You have Trump too, who's like closer to Epstein than any of them, but they're just able to ignore that. So yeah, there's a lot here that I think people were able to run with.
So okay, just one more thing about this that very much disturbs me. First of all, I never paid much attention to it because, just certain circumstantial things. First of all, that the Biden administration had this information for 4 years and through a presidential election cycle never leaked anything. That seemed implausible to then imagine that Trump was implicated in this in any meaningful way. And I remember early on why I just don't imagine that. Like I could imagine that Epstein had this perversion, if you want to call it, to underage girls, but I just didn't imagine it's the kind of thing you can easily introduce into the world of Bill Clinton and Prince. Like people say, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?" No, like I can imagine a rich guy hooking up his friends with adult prostitutes, the ones he really trusts. But I just don't imagine him broaching the subject of 14 or 15-year-old girls or whatever it was that was approached, because these people would be horrified by that. Like that is not like a thing that behind closed doors everybody does. Oh, great, bring on the 15-year-old girls. It's just, I never believed it. But then now what is bothering me is that this aspect of the fact that Alexander Acosta, who I guess was the prosecutor, claimed that, or no, that somebody reported, Vicky Ward, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Claimed that he said that he was told to lay off because Epstein is intelligence. Now, this is kind of the, no pun intended, the load-bearing fact of this story. And what's really bothering me, I'm sure you know this, is that there was an investigation into this by the Office of Professional Responsibility or something. They asked Acosta about this. He denied it. He walked away from it. They even offered him a classified room where he could discuss, like top secret type information, and he declined to do that. And what's hugely upsetting about this story to me is that even the more credible shows like the Megyn Kelly show, they talk about this claim that Epstein, but don't laugh because she is more credible. They talk
more
about
credible, relative. Yes. Okay.
They talk about this claim about Acosta saying he was told Epstein was intelligence. And they do not tell their viewers that this has been looked into, that Acosta denied it under oath, that he was given a classified setting. They obviously want to keep the story going and do not want to share the obvious countervailing facts. So it's not journalism anymore. It's just the Weekly World News.
Yeah, right. I mean, and the Israel thing. It's interesting because Epstein did have a friendship with a former prime minister of Israel, Ehud Barak. So it's not that it's that's I think the other thing that makes it interesting to people.
Well, long after he had access to power, like not like
he was
yeah,
friends with a lot. I mean, yeah, he was a friend. He was a guy who went out and had fun, and people liked hanging out with him.
yeah.
Apparently, that we can't deny that. Um, yeah, it's there. It's just thin, and it becomes like a. It becomes like a game of telephone. Like I've seen people just get up and claim, Acosta has testified to Congress that he was told Epstein was intelligence. Like that's how it becomes, and then nobody goes back. And this is why Michael is so valuable. I mean, so people rarely do this. All you do is just you try to follow the steps. Where did this originally come from? He has a theory that the person who said this was Steve Bannon because Vicky Ward was talking to Bannon at the time for some kind of project, and like if Steve Bannon was like not often considered the most credible or truthful person. If he just said this, publicly, like Epstein is intelligence, nobody would take that seriously. He launders it through a journalist. It gets into the Daily Beast. Suddenly, it's just like literally a fact that everyone accepts forever without checking again. I mean, you really see how
And,
just how bad a lot of the journalism around this is.
here's some of the other circumstantial facts that why would Trump appoint these Epstein fanatics like Bongino and Kash Patel to be in charge of the Epstein files in his own administration, knowing that this is why would he put them in that position? And why, like in every, I've said this on the show before, in every like Hollywood blackmail movie, the guy always says, and if anything should happen to me, there's an envelope in a safe deposit box. Like, why would Epstein just leave himself out there to be murdered without making any contingency plan to prevent his murder? And then why is Ghislaine Maxwell, or however you say her name, sitting in a minimum security prison, apparently not scared at all about anything happening to her, right? It's just nothing is as it would be if this was a real story. It's just she would.
Yeah.
You agree with me, right? Like,
I agree with you completely. I mean, there is if you wanted like a scandal. I mean, the closest thing to a scandal, which I don't think it is like they obviously moved her to a minimum security prison because the Trump administration got something. So they had ended up saying, I don't remember if they officially said this or unofficially, but they basically sent one of the top people in the Department of Justice, who was Trump's former lawyer, to go talk to her, and they absolved they absolved Trump, and then she gets moved to a minimum security prison. So like there is just like the common kind of corruption and like the kind of things that should be scandals like going on within the administration. The fact that it's reported that they sent agents just to comb through and find every mention of Trump because the entire point of the FBI now is the DOJ is to protect Trump. I mean, this stuff is scandalous. Yeah, but no, that's not.
That's an ethical violation, right? He's not supposed to use the levers of justice to.
Yeah, I mean, these are long-standing norms. Like you don't appoint, like you don't even fire the FBI director. You appointed the FBI director used to be appointed every 10 years, and it wouldn't even change with administration. So yeah, we're way beyond any of that.
Well, look, Bill Barr, the much maligned Bill Barr, knew all the details of the Hunter Biden laptop all through that election cycle, and he did the ethical thing. He kept his mouth shut. I thought that was pretty impressive of him. I don't know. I don't think Eric Holder would have done that. I think Eric Holder would have found a way to leak it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say because like, the Biden thing. I mean, there was embarrassing things about Trump in the Epstein files, right? So earlier you said Biden could have leaked it. Yeah, I mean that note that Trump wrote to that love letter he wrote to Epstein about how you never age and stuff like that. That was there. That's pretty damaging.
It's very clever, that note. I mean, much more clever than we ever imagined Trump could be. Right? Enigmas don't age, Jeffrey. It's very. Like I wonder if
right. It's just that's yeah. Imagine if it was Clinton. I mean, like the Michael Wolff tape, like released a tape, like in the final days of the 2020 or 2024 election. Basically, what Epstein said, me and Trump were best. Imagine if it came out about Joe Biden or something. It's just kind of it doesn't. It's all the conspiracy theorists are pro-Trump. So like the most conspiratorial stuff like doesn't get circulation because the pro-Trump and pro-conspiracy are the same people.
That's why it has to be the Jewish thing fueling it, because they want that even more than they want to defend Trump. All right, leaving Epstein aside, I had written you, I think, that I sensed you were souring on Israel. Now, when right after October 7th, you were outrageously defending Israel, almost hyperbolically, and like an apologist almost for almost any kind of major action that Israel intended. And now I feel that maybe you're having some second thoughts about Israel's behavior in the war. You're making a face. If you're listening on audio, he's making a face. Let the record show that he may not agree with what I've just said. So where are you on the Israel topic now? And
Yeah.
also, let me just mention, because it's interesting, even though you might bristle at it, you have an Arabic background. You're a descendant of Palestinian Christians, right? Is that right?
On the father's side, yeah, mother's side, Jordanian, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's still interesting to know that. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm pretty like, so I haven't, look, I wrote a series of articles when the war started, and the position hasn't really changed much. It's always been that Israel has a right to defend itself. Hamas cannot be allowed to rule Gaza after October 7th. It's going to be bloody and terrible, and things are going to happen. But like, this is kind of the national security imperative for Israel. I think what you might be sensing is like, this isn't really Israel's fault, but I'm annoyed at I'm annoyed at how the anti-Semitism issue has been used by the Trump administration and the justification to kind of go after universities. So I was always against, this wokeness stuff. It was commonly what they would do is they would say, well, Harvard or Princeton, you're discriminating against African Americans. Why? Because some black person said they felt unsafe. And a lot of the civil rights, a lot of the federal government mandates and pressures on the universities came from this idea that everyone needs a safe environment, and even it infringed on some free speech concerns. On some things, on this wokeness stuff, the administration has been doing great things. At the same time, they've kind of taken that playbook and used it for anti-Semitism, and it's stuff like even trying to deport people for writing the wrong op-ed or going to the wrong protest. There was one girl at Columbia from South Korea who had been in the United States like her whole life, but like protested against Israel, which I'm not a fan of these college protesters who are protesting against Israel. But still, like, why are we doing this? Why is this that, like, why are we trying to really infringe free speech on ways that like conservatives were complaining about not that long ago? And so, yeah, I've been very kind of annoyed with what's been going on with the universities, despite the good stuff that has been done. But it doesn't directly reflect on the Israeli war effort, which is a separate question.
Yeah, I agree with you about the free speech stuff. Although I do have this thought from time to time, just as a matter of like, I don't know how to put it, but as a matter of like real world expediency over principle, as it were, like with regard to immigration, let's say you're in an administration and you know that it's very likely that the 5 things you propose to do are going to eventually get overturned by the courts. But you know that after you do those 5 things, even after it's overturned by the courts, you will accomplish this righteous agenda in a great way, as we've seen with, I think, many of the things we could both agree have been excessive in the way they're enforcing ICE and deporting, and this guy to El Salvador in prison. I mean, horrible things. But somehow, in the end, the border crossings are almost at 0 now, right? This is an accomplishment. In the same way Jefferson bought Louisiana, knowing full well he probably had no authority to do so. It was an accomplishment that was a righteous accomplishment, and controlling the border is a righteous accomplishment. Would you do that if you were president? Would you pursue policies that you know would eventually get overturned if you knew that the pot of gold would be the accomplishment in that roundabout way? You follow the question, right? I
Yeah,
took a
sure.
long time. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, on principle, I'm not opposed to it. I think the Israeli war effort is one such case where it's like it's really terrible some of the things you have to do, but it's there's a necessity of state. So I'm not against Jefferson buying Louisiana, even though it might not have been followed all the proper legal procedures. That's true. My
It's
there's
hardball, he's playing hardball because one thing, again, I'm pretty sure we agree on is that the universities have been having a horrible double standard for years and years and years on the issues they support versus the issues they oppose. And now this is a shot across the bow, an illegal shot across the bow, but it's going to leave them with a sting, and they will clean up their act in some way going forward. And how else is he going to get them to do that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a lot of, if you want to go after the universities for like discriminating based on race and contravention of what the Supreme Court recently ruled, you have a lot of ammunition to do that. I mean, I wonder whether you are actually just kind of diverting your attention from things that are on stronger legal grounds. So you kind of have to check the premise. I think there's also been another problem where it's, it's kind of nihilistic. It's like, you discriminate based on race, therefore we're going to cut off your your medical research. That's an overreaction. Even as someone who doesn't like wokeness and thinks it's a major problem, there are things you could do between nothing and we're gonna defend Harvard science, right? And some of their demands are just kind of crazy. I mean, they had one where they were demanding at some point diversity based on thought in like every department, so every department has to have affirmative action for Trump supporters. I mean, it's kind of nuts. So I don't know. I don't see it this stuff at the universities as the stuff that I don't like. I don't see it as necessarily helping, leading to a better long term solution. Maybe it's like you're carpet bombing them and they're going to be so afraid of afraid of doing anything woke that they're never going to even go in that direction, like maybe. But do you need like the kind of hysteria about anti-semitism, or do you need this ideas about intellectual diversity making these demands that are just impossible? Does that help? I don't see it.
Now, you have me at a disadvantage because I don't know the details or the facts barely. I just this issue of the real world versus the academic drawing board always fascinates me. And as we know, every like Senator Obama gets behind the desk and does 1,000 different things that President Obama does 1,000 different things that Senator Obama would have been outraged by, because somehow when you get behind the desk, you've got to get stuff done. And there is a world which is hardball, especially when the law is so fucked up. I mean, I know as a business person, Tyler Cowen, our friend, said something as an aside on a show one time that applies to a lot of things. He says, well, you can't really follow all the rules of policing and be an effective policeman. Meaning that the system is set up that you really can't accomplish the goal if you really are going to be a stickler for all the rules. And this is a problem in many different contexts. The rules are just so oppressive that to get things done requires a little cheating.
Yes, I mean, maybe. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's
To
right.
get good things done. I don't mean to take it to get bad things done. I mean to get good
Yeah.
things.
So you have a couple different things going on, right? You have like the goals and whether we think the goals are worthwhile, like putting, the universities. I think just he wants them to be worshiping Trump. Like, I don't think that that's a good goal, but there's the goals. And then there's there's the idea that regulations are too, they're too restrictive. So going after, say, regulations, I mean, that's some good thing. Unfortunately, they've done it, I think, in a poor way, which they've just tied it to firing government employees, which is not the way to do it, because sometimes, like, if you need permits or you need to reform the system, you often need employees to actually do that. You just create more bottlenecks and more delays. And then you have the idea of like, when Trump is breaking rules, is he also breaking rules that are positive, like the norm that the Justice Department and the FBI are at arm's length from the president? They're not just toadies who just fawn over him and do whatever he wants. I wrote an article not that long ago about people talk about the Biden administration, like how angry Biden was at Merrick Garland throughout the administration. He puts his son on trial. His son gets convicted. There's investigations into Biden. Unthinkable under Trump. Just unthinkable that like Don Jr. or Eric would be indicted while Trump is in office. So some of these norms are, some of these norms are bad. Some of them are actually good. I think on foreign policy, I think this is something I meant to write more about. The fact that like we had this way of doing things where you just wouldn't talk to foreign leaders, like you wouldn't, you would just say whatever. Like we went North Korea, we went a half a century, no American leader ever talked to a North Korean leader, not even high level contacts. Now Trump just goes and says, oh yeah, I'll meet with Kim Jong Un. Now nothing really came of that, but it isn't. He didn't lose anything either, right? And so the fact that he's willing to just go meet with Putin, maybe people are worried and right to be worried that he just like likes Putin and will like sell him out. But actually, I don't think it's worked out that way. I think meeting with Putin and being exposed to his ideas has made him more anti-Putin because he's like, oh God, this guy really doesn't want peace. This guy really wants to dominate Ukraine. So the fact that Trump will break these norms in some cases is actually good. I think Jared Kushner, what they did with the Abraham Accords in the first administration, is another example of this. But then you have like the norms that you don't be corrupt and just use government to enrich yourself and help out your buddies. That's the kind of norm that needs to be protected.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, just for the listeners, I am actually offended by most of the things that Trump is doing when it comes to the speech on campus. I just try to check myself and to be make sure I'm not being too holier than thou, because after all, Biden did decide to forgive all the student loans when he knew it certainly wasn't legal, and then Obama did legalize all the Dreamers when he certainly knew it wasn't legal. And there's many examples. It's not unprecedented for the president to just do something he knows he can't do. But this is a particular third rail of that kind of behavior. And Trump does everything. The degree is different too. Trump is just more vulgar than we can imagine.
And even those, they weren't personal corruption. There was no evidence that Biden was profiting off of student loan forgiveness. They had these policy,
But I'm talking about the speech stuff. Yeah, the corruption thing, there's no argument for me.
Right. It's just
totally. I still prefer him to Kamala Harris, I have to say. But, those are the two choices. All right, Israel. Now, I had kind of gotten a little quiet about Israel. I've been getting like DMs about it and people tweaking me on Twitter. And I'll explain myself why I got quiet. I kind of gathered my thoughts. So these are the things that have been going through my mind, and they're related in my mind. First of all, it's true in my mind that the hardliners, the Churchill types, are usually right. The skeptics are usually right. Charles Krauthammer once said, conservatism was the triumph of experience over hope. And so I tend to err on the side of the hardliners. However, and this is very important, they're not always right. And the dreamers are the ones who often move history forward. And a good example of this is that William F. Buckley, he had the failure of imagination to imagine that integration and civil rights could actually bring us this, tremendous progress. And so I'm always in my own mind, like, well, I tend towards the hardliners, but am I missing it? Am I going to be one of these idiots who couldn't imagine the dream? So that's one part of it. The other thing is that I'm becoming more and more concerned about the dehumanization. Now, the typical charge is that the enemy, like the genocidaire, dehumanizes the people, softening the ground in order to commit genocide, right? That's like what the Nazis did. But I think there's something else that might be going on here that's concerned me as part of the reason I kept quiet, which is that when the hardliners are correct in presenting the picture that there's nothing we can do here that's going to be consistent with our fundamental interest, that will not lead to a horrible number of deaths of women and children. Hamas is a treachery wrapped in a treachery inside an atrocity wrapped in a war crime. Use that Churchill thing. And there is no way we're going to get rid of Hamas without them forcing us to kill many, many people. And we have to get rid of Hamas because all the hardliners in the past warned us about where we were heading. And here, sure enough, they turned out to be right. And 10 years from now, the way technology is going, it'll only get worse. And we have Iran and the Houthis. So we have to do this. And I feel, I'm taking a long time to get to this. I feel that when decent people find themselves in a situation where they have to do unspeakable things, that they have to have so much blood on their hands to kill innocent people, the cognitive dissonance is so intense that causes a dehumanization. They have to dehumanize the people they're killing because they can't live with themselves. And then once that dehumanization sets in, the speed bump is gone. And then they will quite likely end up killing more people than they had to. And I worry, are they killing more people than they have to? And this is all one, unit together in my mind. And I just became very quiet about it. And yet, I still don't know that Israel has any choice but to do what it's doing. And I know people want to tell me that Netanyahu is keeping the war going because he's corrupt and because he's worried about prosecution. And that's all plausible, except when he then presents his arguments for why he needs to continue the war. They make sense for the most part to me. So that's a disjointed kind of exposition of what I've been thinking. How does that jive with what you've been thinking?
Yeah. So the idea that, like whether when people debate whether Israel should be negotiating this way or doing this or doing that or fighting the war this way or that way, it's hard to know from the outside. It's hard to know to micromanage these things. We don't know what they're saying when they're negotiating between them and Hamas. We don't know what efforts the Israelis are making. We don't know what's propaganda and what's real. So from the perspective of having an opinion on exactly what Israel is doing at any particular point, or whether they're doing something counterproductive or doesn't make sense, or the political considerations of Netanyahu, that's very, very hard to judge in real time from the outside. More generally, there is a real trade-off here, and most people who are concerned about human rights issues in Gaza, as we all should be, they're often not looking at the trade-off. So I have a friend who was on the podcast a few times, Philippe Lemoine, a very smart guy. He basically has said from the beginning of the war that Hamas has to stay in power because the only way to get rid of Hamas is, doing something similar to what's going on right now. Very few people will take that position. Very few people will say they'll just have some pie in the sky thing. Look, Hamas survived this war. If they survived this war, let's say they survived the war that ends today, they did not fold. They did not step down under the most extreme pressure one can imagine. The idea that they're just going to give up their weapons and go back to normal in the period afterwards, it's not credible. And so the people really have to explain, or at least understand, that Hamas is going to have a role here. It's going to be a political force going forward. Now, again, that said, we don't have all the details. Like, for all we know, Hamas has, I really doubt this, but Hamas could have told Netanyahu, we'll surrender, just stop bombing us for a day. I don't think anyone has said that. We just have no idea, right? But from the outside, it does look like Hamas thinks it can ride this out. And the reason it thinks it can ride this out is that it thinks the pressure over what Israel is doing is going to be enough that eventually they're going to buckle and they're going to come to some agreement where Hamas is still able to stay in power. And stay in power to do what? Well, eventually the same thing again. Is that doing the Palestinian people any favors? If Gaza still is ruled by Hamas, dedicated to destroying Israel, another 10, 15 years, whatever it takes, we start this thing all over again. I don't think that could be the outcome. I don't think Israel can allow that to be the outcome. I don't think that's a good outcome for the Palestinians either.
So Well, then you support. Do you think Israel should reoccupy? Should they take territory?
Yeah, the idea that again, it's difficult to say from like the outside what the plans are. I mean, I think that would be kind of hubris to say exactly what it would be. I think that the end goal has to be something along the lines of Hamas does not rule Gaza, and there's a transition to something else. Now, the thing that I've always supported, and people are horrified by this, but I like the idea of Palestinians being allowed to leave as refugees. Even before the war, there was a poll where something like 40% of Gazans, said they would like to immigrate. People would like to immigrate from third world countries, even when there isn't a war going on to a large degree. And people will say, well, that's ethnic cleansing. I mean, it's, it's every other conflict in the world. We think it's a good idea to get people who are in the midst of the war zone out of it into a safer location. And so I've always wanted that to be part of the solution. I've wanted Palestinians to leave. I want Palestinians to have a better standard of living somewhere else, not to be under the control of Hamas, not to have to worry about the Jews or the Jewish state or anything like that. They'd come to Europe. Maybe there would be problems there, but it wouldn't be the same problems to anywhere the same degree. And so, yeah, I think some combination of some combination of letting the Palestinians leave as refugees and then making sure Hamas doesn't remain in power. I think that has to be the end goal. Whether it's like occupy Gaza City or don't occupy Gaza City, I mean, these are kind of technical matters that I'm not qualified to talk about.
It's so upsetting. I mean, I always say there's a moral obligation to the practical, a moral obligation to the possible. There is this argument. I heard an Israeli express it to me recently. Say, look, we want them to have a state. They can have a state. They can have a capital in East Jerusalem. They can have Gaza. They can have whatever they want. He says, but if they won't accept it, they have to go. This is his attitude. If they won't accept it, they have to go. And I'm not advocating this, but I understand the logic there because the Palestinians, after all, do have a path right before their eyes that they could follow to get a state and end this conflict once and for all, which is to have a leader and say, listen, we offered us A, B, C. We'd also like this little change, but we basically know what the solution is, 98% of the land and land swaps and capital needs. Basically everything that's already been offered, whatever tweaks, we don't even know whatever tweaks they want. And to say, Israel, if that's what we want, if you give us that, then this will be over. They have that possible path. The Israelis, as far as I can imagine it, they have no path to peace here. There's nothing they can do. There's, they can flail from left-wing policies to right-wing policies. But what we seem to be discovering over the last 25 years or 26 years since 1999 or something is that there's no thirst for a two-state solution on the other side, at least not a critical mass enough to make it come true. And does Israel have to live this way, therefore, forever? Is that the moral outcome? The moral outcome of the world says, well, you can't ever throw people out. So what you have to do is live this way forever. And that doesn't seem fair either.
Yeah, I think that the idea of Palestinians being allowed to leave, that's something that has to happen only once, right? You just have to have somebody to take them at some point. The Trump administration has been talking about it. So it could potentially happen. It's actually, I think, it's even more difficult than you say, because it's not like there's one guy, an Israeli and a Palestinian, and they can just negotiate and come to a deal. These are fractious communities, or a state in the case of Israel, there's not one person who represents the Palestinians. There's Hamas, there's factions within Hamas, there's public opinion in Gaza, there's the West Bank, there's the Palestinian Authority. And even if one person among those, one party wants to make a deal, another party can come along and assassinate that person or do something else. Same thing with Israel. Israel has extremists who just don't want the Palestinians around. They have a lot of power in the government now. Their influence is growing in American society. So it's even like to sit there and be like, oh, well, the Israelis, want peace and the Palestinians don't, or vice versa. This is too optimistic, because it's just like you're thinking of it as like one person can just change their mind and they can put their minds together and they can make a deal and everything can work out. When it's much more tragic than that. It's like factions that are like difficult, and the Palestinians like don't even exist as a collective. They're not one country or one group. And that's why, again, to go back to the refugee thing, that's why I do think this is intractable. This is not like, countries sometimes have civil wars that last decades. You have Palestinians, if you're going to have like, who's going to run Palestine, this thing that's like Gaza and the West Bank, and like, we don't even know there's not like, you want to recognize a Palestinian state when there's not like one force in control of these things. And then on top of that, you want to make peace with Israel, which has its own internal politics and all this stuff going on within it. This is a pipe dream. This is a fantasy. I've always thought this was kind of hopeless from the beginning, and that's where we are. Israel has to kind of take care of the threats that it faces, and we just have to kind of understand what a tragic situation this is.
I don't fully agree with you, because I don't think it's asking too much to have one Palestinian leader from one of these factions express the want to make peace position. And on Israel's side, as I understand the Israeli,
I mean, he could. I mean, one guy could express it. He might get assassinated like that.
right.
He might. I mean, it's a tough situation.
But I'm saying, right. So, but if you look at it, people say you can't even have one guy who says publicly he wants to make peace. This is reason for tremendous pessimism. On the Israeli side, you have people who are, ready for unilateral withdrawal. You have skeptics who say they'll never make peace with us. But one thing is for sure, definitely a majority of Israel would want to make peace if they saw another side which was receptive to it. I have zero doubt about that. And even if that leader who made peace was assassinated, the peace stands in a actual nation that signs treaties, just like Saddam was assassinated. But in the Palestinian state, who knows what that means? The piece of paper is worthless, probably. So it's a very bad situation, which leads me to: did you watch the Ezra Klein interview about genocide?
I listened to like a quarter of it.
All right. Do you have a feeling on the genocide issue?
I think it's one of these. No, the genocide. I mean, I was kind of turned off by the whole tone of the discussion, because I know this. I studied law school. I took classes on international law. The definition that they have is kind of, it's like to cause. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's something along the lines of like to cause elimination or harm or mental anguish to a group in complete or in part. It's like, okay, causing mental.
It's to destroy a people. It means physical destruction by the current president. Current precedent, to destroy a people in whole or in part. You have to kill them.
No. I remember listening. Maybe I was getting it wrong. Let me see. Definition of genocide. Would you mind if I Google it? Because
go ahead.
I remember it was like much more. Okay, so yeah.
The definition that you're saying was actually rejected by the genocide.
Okay, it's acts by killing, causing deflecting conditions. Okay, so here's the so genocide, United Nations. Okay, so here's the UN, a top source. Genocide is a crime. So definition of crime is contained in Article 2. Basically, definition. Okay, so it says, number 1, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts. This is Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, or in whole or in part. Okay, you have to be intending to destroy them. That's true. Okay, so, and then it says, as such, causing bodily or mental harm. Okay, so you have to at least intend to destroy. Now, if I destroy you, I'm destroying the Jewish people in part. Right? Hamas is part of the Palestinian people, so it is you are trying to destroy Palestinians in part, right? So these things are kind of. Look, I think this kind of absolutist approach to, it is kind of even they talked about Nuremberg trial, victor's justice. The Soviets committed atrocities in many cases as bad as or worse than the Nazi Germany. It is an argument that I think is just kind of, it's like we have this sometimes about terrorism. Like people will be like, oh, this white person killed somebody, he was racist. Leftists will complain, why don't they consider it terrorism? And then some Islamists will do something and conservatives will say it's terrorism. But it's like, it's just a crime and you should put that person in jail for whatever the sentence is for killing people or whatever. I feel the same way. Like we have to discuss this in the context of like, the rights of people and what makes sense for Israel to do and national security considerations and all the stuff we've been talking here. But like whether we have this kind of magic word that we all land on, I find those kind of debates less interesting.
Less interesting, but no, I think it's very, very important. We live in an age of kind of mass psychoses and mass lathers, like working into a lather, and you see tremendously large groups of people persuaded of truths which, to the people who haven't been body snatched, look like mental illness. Like Russiagate seemed like a psychosis to me. The idea that more than half the country seemed to think that there was nothing, that Joe Biden was fine. You could probably think of more examples, but this notion that Israel is committing genocide is becoming fact. And this is going to stay on the Jewish people and on Israel forever. And the flimsiness of it. So in this Ezra Klein interview, he interviews this guy. I have a clip here prepared. The one that says self-defense. Israel. I'm sorry. Would Israel stop? So in this interview, he interviews this guy, Philippe Sands, who was one of the, genocide. No, you don't play it. Yeah, I'll tell you when to play it. Yeah. One of the genocide mavens. And Ezra Klein asks him, he's trying to play devil's advocate.
How much does that also extend to the arguments around self-defense? Which is to say that when you look at the history of genocide proceedings, I think it is very hard to find one that does not claim on behalf of those who committed the genocide, going back to the Germans, that they were acting in self-defense, that they faced a threat from this group. It was sabotage from within, there was an attack, there was an assassination, and they had no choice. The only way to protect themselves was to destroy this group's capacity to be a group or capacity to act or capacity to exist utterly. How does genocide law balance the omnipresence of claims about self-defense?
Well, it doesn't balance it well in relation to the, single intent argument that seems to have emerged, which, as I've explained, I'm deeply troubled by.
Ezra Klein asks him, okay, Israelis would say, look, unlike other genocides, Hamas has a choice here. Hamas can surrender. Hamas can give up the hostages. Hamas could leave Gaza and turn it over to someone else. The Jews never had that choice from the Nazis. The Tutsis never had that choice from the Hutus. How can it be intended to destroy a people if the leadership of the people who are being killed has this easy option of capitulating? And Sand's answer is, that's just a hypothetical. Meaning to me, and again, this is the load-bearing aspect of the argument, because if you do want to say, well, yes, of course, if Hamas would leave Gaza, that would be the end of it, then, well, how can you argue the intention here is to destroy the people? And what he said, I'm reading between the lines now, he's saying it's a hypothetical, meaning we don't know. Actually, if Hamas were to surrender and leave Gaza and release all the hostages, Israel might very well just continue to slaughter all the Palestinian people. And of course, Ezra Klein doesn't push back on that at all. And that, to me, I think you'll agree, is delusional. Who could imagine that if Hamas were to surrender tomorrow and take safe passage out of Gaza, release all the hostages, that the IDF would continue to bomb civilians in Gaza? And the fact that somebody like Ezra Klein has moved so far towards the delusional that he's ready to entertain that as an argument not to be laughed out of court is very disheartening to me. And you see this kind of thing all around. There's nothing Israel is not capable of. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your intuition here. Obviously, that this is kind of a crazy thing to allege, and a crazy kind of it reflects a poor model of the actors involved in this conflict and their motivations. I think that Israel could have launched this before October 7th, obviously, but they could have done something like this. They obviously didn't. There's pressure, there's humanitarian pressures within Israeli societies. This is one of the discrepancies between Palestinian society and Israeli society. Israeli society actually cares when you violate human rights. Israel doesn't want anything. It left Gaza. It doesn't want anything to do with Gaza. It would be glad if Hamas ruled Gaza, in these 15 years or whatever it was that they ruled Gaza before October 7th, and they could have submitted some kind of petition for statehood, and they could have put forward some requests or some demands. They didn't. They never did that. So there's clearly no interest. There's maybe interest in West Bank. You can make that case, but there's no interest in Gaza. There's no interest in Lebanon, right? Hezbollah was attacking Israel before Israel struck back, but there's a religious or an ideological motivation here behind a lot of the anti-Israeli efforts. And Israel, there's some of that too. There's probably some ideological things around Jerusalem and so forth, but it's mostly a security issue, especially related to Gaza. And I think it's kind of crazy not to recognize that.
I'll play this other clip of Ezra Klein without setting it up, so I can just get your reaction to it, see if it's the same as mine. Go ahead, play that one, John.
How much does that also extend to the arguments around self-defense, which is to say that when you look at the history of genocide proceedings, I think it is very hard to find one that does not claim on behalf of those who committed the genocide, going back to the Germans, that they were acting in self-defense, that they faced a threat from this group. It was sabotage from within. There was an attack. There was an assassination. And they had no choice. The only way to protect themselves was to destroy this group's capacity to be a group or capacity to act or capacity to exist utterly. How does genocide law balance the omnipresence of claims about self-defense?
Well, it doesn't balance it well in relation to the, single intent argument that seems to have emerged, which, as I've explained, I'm deeply troubled by.
All right. What do you take of him comparing the Nazi claims of self-defense to the Israeli claims of self-defense?
For Ezra, I think it was a little bit. So first of all, that clip where he said, we don't know what Israel would do. I think a good follow-up question would have been, okay, let's just assume the premise, right? That's what you often do. If you believe that if Hamas laid down the arms, Israel would stop fighting, would that distinguish this from Nazi Germany? That would be an interesting question, and then we could kind of differentiate where we disagree, and then how much depends on his idea of like the nature of the Israeli.
Would you say that would be an obvious follow-up question?
I don't know, for a smart person like Ezra, maybe. I mean, I think it's the kind of question you ask if you want to kind of get to what's important here.
That's right. Hypotheticals are the bread and butter of these conversations. Since when does a hypothetical disqualify the what if question? Anyway, and the second one, Ezra, he seems to be implying to me. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think about this self-defense comparison?
So it is a good question. I mean, I don't know if the implication is there, but the idea is that everyone, I see it maybe, I don't know, you have to listen to more in context, I'm not sure, but you could see this as kind of, he's skeptical, he's pushing, he's probing on these things because, look, everyone has a self-defense claim. The Nazis thought that the Jews were, responsible for international Bolshevism and destroying the society or whatever. And sometimes that's going to be true and sometimes it's going to be false. Sometimes a country's going to be acting in self-defense and sometimes not. And the question is like, what are the genocide mavens, as you call them? What do they do with that? How do they balance this truth, this reality that countries have national security concerns. They have to defend themselves. They have threats coming from abroad, with the idea that they shouldn't harm civilians or kill them or whole in part or whatever the genocide question. This is an interesting question because, what is it? It's like they kill one person, you can kill one person. Like, what is actually the rule here? Can you kill 5 people to get to one terrorist, or 2 people, or 3 people? Or what is kind of the rule here? And I think that what Ezra may be getting at, in the charitable interpretation of what he's doing here, is that they just don't have answers to this. These people, these genocide scholars, mavens, whatever, like want to sit there and like grandstand and morally preen and say it's so bad what this country is doing, but they really don't have any balance ability. It's like someone who just goes and looks at crime and says the police mistreated this person, that person, don't have any appreciation of like the difficult situation police find themselves in, why we have police, the legitimate concerns that people have for public safety. And so this genocide thing, it kind of just seems like it doesn't take into account these other things that you need to be worrying about when you're judging the conduct of a country.
Yeah, well, I think if you go back and watch it in context, which I do recommend because it's very influential type of thought right now, is that that's not what he was. He was not trying to poke holes in the genocide argument. He was trying to poke holes in the Israeli notion, claim of self-defense. And I thought it was so dumb. I mean, every day in a courtroom, there's some dude who killed somebody who's claiming self-defense. And then the trier of fact has to decide, were you reasonably defending yourself, or is this just a pretext, And the idea that the Germans had to round up all their Jews to kill them in self-defense, their German citizens, the shop owners, the people, comparing that to Hamas on October 7th and the rockets coming in and the promise to do it again and plans to divide up Israel into cantons. I mean, and how could he possibly compare? I mean, does he think,
but
is he claiming that Israel's self-defense is a pretext here? Go ahead, sorry.
But the question he ends up asking is not about Israel. The question he ends up asking is, how do genocide scholars deal with this? Right. Yeah. So it is. That's why the way I heard it was, okay, this is kind of a tension in your guys' worldview. He could have asked, well, he could have had the question, well, what makes Israel different? Or I don't know, like, why does Israel get away with it or something like that? He could have like focused on Israel, but he did focus. It seemed like a more kind of intellectual discussion of kind of what are you genocide types doing here exactly?
If you get a chance, listen to it. I took it to mean, listen, everybody claims self-defense. So why are we going to, we really have to be very skeptical about this excuse.
I don't think Ezra Klein would believe, though, that nobody has like ever a legitimate self-defense claim, right? I mean, he thought Israel had a right to self-defense at the beginning of the conflict. So it would be a kind of an unreasonable belief.
He doesn't believe that what Israel is doing now can be characterized as self-defense. And one of the things they do is, and look, much of what I'm saying in this show, I find myself, it's like I am of two minds of some of these things, and I'm just expressing one of the minds. I was just, this Israeli use of food as a weapon in the war. But, if it were just Hamas, and there was no Iran and no Hezbollah and no, ring of adversaries, it would have to be a different consideration. Israel is not simply worried about Hamas. Israel is worried about a five-front war that's funded with billions and billions of dollars and that can sneak in things. Like one of the things I've asked people and nobody really answers, like, okay, you think Israel should stop now? Now, years ago, Israel used to get criticized for this horribly draconian embargo that it had of goods coming into Gaza. But we know now that this embargo leaked like a sieve. We're 2 years into this war, and Hamas still has materials for rockets from time to time. So if they're going to leave Hamas in charge, obviously Israel's going to have a blockade that's 3 times as strict as the previous one was if they're going to prevent. Are you going to support Israel in this new blockade if you want Israel to leave Hamas in charge? And they all say, no, of course not. So, it's not a plausible position. So, it's not just Hamas. It's Hamas as the receiving ground for Iranian and Qatari weapons and money and technology, and maybe someday enriched uranium. And that's all the marbles that Israel's worried about here. And Ezra Klein will just never engage with that argument. He just wants to pretend, who are you telling me? You're worried about this ragtag group of people. The big Israel is worried about this tiny little Gaza. That's not self-defense. That's genocide, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's not just like you said. It's not just the leaking of the embargo. A lot of the stuff that was allowed came in and was put to dual use. A lot of the things you could use to build schools and hospitals, you could use to build tunnels too. And we saw the extent of the tunnel network that Hamas built with things with material that was diverted from other uses. Yeah, the Ezra Klein. I think these people who just kind of change their opinion on the war over time, I think that they never kind of grappled with it's bad, it looks bad, it's a bad situation within Gaza. They've never kind of grappled with what they want an alternative. They just want, I think it's something along, to be fair, they're like, it's not this, whatever this is, whatever leads to this much death and destruction, do something else. And I guess that's one position. At the same time, I mean, you do, I think, have some obligation to think carefully about what comes next. And you just don't hear it. I mean, you just hear complaints about the current situation. And there has to be some kind of thought, so put forward some assumptions of like what you think Hamas's motivations are, what their capabilities are, and what happens if Israel ends the war today. You just don't see it.
This brings out, again, what I was talking about, the hardliners. So liberals, they tend to see the past as a black and white movie. Terrible things don't happen anymore. What is Israel doing? People don't kill people like this anymore in the modern day. This is the way it was back then in black and white, as I said. But Israel says we're living in 1939. This is real life, and we don't want to do this. But as you said, what do we do? Just kick the can down the road another 10 years? Well, it's easy for you guys to say. Where is your ire? Why are you not requiring of Hamas anything? You could make an easy checklist of things Hamas could do, each one that would immediately reduce the number of innocent Gazans that would die. Wear uniforms, send the innocent people to the shoreline, stop booby trapping. Why is all of Gaza destroyed? International law is a bitch because it actually says that when you start using things for military purposes, it becomes a military target. And that aspect of the law is very difficult for people to internalize. Gaza may be 75% destroyed because they turned 75% of it into military targets, including every single building that they booby trap. This is, my heart is just raw about what's going on there, especially because of the close relationships I have for many, many reasons. I am not inclined to want to say this is the right thing to do. This is unbearable. But as you said, then what are they supposed to do? And what is Hamas's role in this? Some fucking Palestinian leader to say some words of peace, something that an Israeli leader could say, okay, I think we have beginnings of a solution here that will not require us to assume the worst yet again. I don't know. I asked ChatGPT, I know you have to go. I asked ChatGPT to give me 10 questions to ask Richard Hanania.
I don't know how well does it know me. I don't know.
It knows you very well.
Oh, great.
I'll just read you the second one. I'll send you a link to all 10. You might find them interesting. This is ChatGPT 5 Pro. I don't know if you're on to that yet.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's very useful. Yeah.
It is unbelievable. But question 2 was your U-turn on free speech absolutism. In that August 5th episode, you said Elon's X and the Trump movement convinced you the internet needs, quote, responsible academics, curators of content. Define the mechanism. Who appoints curators? How are they audited? And what guardrails prevent them from becoming the very censorship cartel you once attacked? Would you accept throttling your own posts under such a system?
That's a good question. That's very recent. Did you feed it anything? Did you just ask it about me?
The question was,
Did you give it any links of like recent?
I'm interviewing Richard Hanania today based on his tweets, articles, and appearances from the last 30 days. Can you generate
Okay.
10 provocative questions that will interest a
Mhm.
wide audience?
Okay, well that's very good. Yeah, so the U-turn on free speech is not a U-turn. I mean, the government I still think doesn't have a role here. What I used to complain about and what a lot of people complained about was the idea of like private sector curation. Like, why does YouTube or Google or Twitter before Elon? Why do they say some people are deplatformed or their reach is limited? And I think we got that kind of experiment of what happens when you have the free speech, absolutism. Not exactly perfect. I mean, Elon still puts his thumb on the scale, but much closer to free speech than what we had before. And we've seen what the market wants. It wants, anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories and anti-vax content. It's shocking. I discover all the time a new account that is just out of its mind. Person who would have no following under a censorship regime has 6-figure, 7-figure accounts. I discover these people all the time. And look, you use ChatGPT. I like the fact that ChatGPT does not work. Imagine if it worked the way Twitter was. It just everything on the internet, it just considered equal. Like, no, it gives you reputable news sources. Google does this too. YouTube does this too. Before it gets to the crazy stuff, it's not just going off of any random person's blog, whatever people are typing, whatever the most common opinion is. And so, X is unusable. There was this woman who posted a picture of her and a white woman with her black husband. She had like 15,000 followers. I don't know. She's some Instagram influencer. It's like, I'm having a baby. And I'm like, oh no, like she doesn't know what Twitter has become. Like you don't do this on Twitter. And you can look at the replies. It's completely like this. So like, it's a place where if you have a multiracial family now, you cannot just post a family picture on Twitter. This is free speech. There's people who are very aggressive and online who think like this. Is there anything wrong with a social media platform saying we don't want to be this and we're gonna deplatform these people or put them at the very, very bottom? No, there's nothing wrong with that. I think we've seen that is necessary to make these to make this entire public discourse thing usable. Now, like, how does it get abused, this and that? This is an issue. You're right, because like I had like BS suspensions under the old Twitter regime. We all have seen examples, and we all remember examples of people who were saying reasonable things. They were getting banned. I think that maybe having some kind of diversity is good. Maybe it's good. I don't know. The Nazis take over Twitter, and then YouTube is still kind of woke. Like maybe something like that. But like the idea that like everything should become Twitter. I think that would be a dystopia. Maybe it's fine. There's one Twitter. Let all the Nazis gather in one place. But I'm glad that ChatGPT and Google do not work the way Twitter does.
I'm on the same wavelength as you. The government doesn't have a role in it, but I'm very worried. I might even have said to you the last time we were on, the truth did not turn out to be the weighty anchor that the free speech advocates always assumed it would be. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, marketplace of ideas. Actually, no, sunlight is not much of a disinfectant, and the marketplace of ideas really needs regulators. And maybe culturally we'll grow into it in some way. Maybe we need to start teaching kids. Like, there's a lot of things that you like. Maybe I'm fantasizing that a curriculum in grammar school and high school might at least hedge some of these problems. How to read the internet. Just as an aside, this guy Mamdani, like, would he be able to have the success he's having if our children were educated just on the basic empirical evidence about how these ideas work? I don't even mean ideological. Just like, here's some countries, here's capitalist countries. There's very few economists who think like Mamdani from left to right, right? This is all really discredited stuff, but our citizens have no fucking idea about this stuff. That's part of our vulnerability.
Yeah, I've thought about this. I've thought about kind of how we treat misinformation and like economic misinformation, how even though it's the most relevant thing for like being a voter or a smart citizen, it's never treated as like, oh my God, people don't believe in climate change. People don't believe in evolution. It's like, oh my God, people believe in rent control. It's not treated as anything as, as crazy. Yeah, you're right. I don't know, like, whether we can educate ourselves out. It's just people are online and it's just fun to be racist and to attack people. And I don't know. I think this kind of the free speech thing, it became too accessible. It was like, it's like the answer to speech, bad speech is more speech. I think this was like, if you were 30 years ago, if you wanted to express your political opinion, you'd have to like start a magazine or get published by an editor or like become a TV pundit. Usually you had to be, I don't know, a professor, some kind of intellectual or something. Now, it's like the greatest geniuses in the world and like, people with Alzheimer's and people with deep mental problems and stupid people and crazy people are all like in this, one kind of, even though it's fragmented to a certain extent, are coming together. And with that, there's clearly no reason to expect that the smartest ideas or the most truthful ideas are going to win out, because most people are not philosophers or careful intellectual thinkers about political matters. So yeah, it might just be the technology has changed and kind of we need new thinking about public discourse as a result.
To make this the last thing, when I was a kid, I used to joke, or I observed, that every new technology immediately became harnessed by porn, VHS, CDs, streaming, everything. And every new free speech technology gets harnessed by anti-Semites. And, from a Jewish point of view, what we're experiencing now in terms of the kind of horseshoe of the left and the right now exceeds the left in the crazy kind of general Jews control the world, Jews, Ukraine, Jews, everything kind of old school anti-Semitism, which has come back like overnight. Like who fucking knew that this could come back in this way? And Tucker Carlson, all these guys. But then on the left, people like Ezra Klein, impotent to even defend the charge that Israel wouldn't continue to slaughter the Palestinians, even if Hamas was gone and even if the hostages were released. I mean, what a bloodthirsty people these are. If you can't even say, I really think it's unlikely. It's a hypothetical. We have no way. Flip a coin. Israel could go either way. They might just continue to. So, and they feed each other. And I used to say that the right was the bulwark. I used to say that if the right ever starts thinking about Jews the way the left think, or about Israel the way the left has been thinking about it, if the Republicans ever join, it's just going to be like a tsunami. And I think we're experiencing that tsunami. Who is thinking clearly about anything regarding the Jews right now?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting aspect of Israeli behavior too, probably, that you talk about, well, the future, they're going to have to worry about maybe Hezbollah reconstituting itself, Iran, what's going to be the future with all these kind of hostile forces in the region. At the same time, maybe if you're looking at American politics, this might be the best Republican administration you're ever going to have by far. And the next generation, the left and the right, it's very interesting. I've been looking at these like kind of trends of where the right is going. The anti-Israeli perspective has, I think there's been a watershed in the last few months even. Two people, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, really going hard against Israel. This is not something you would have seen 2 or 3 years ago. Bannon, I think, has always been kind of ahead of these trends, and he's good at skating where the puck is going. Right. And so I think that this is, the long-term trends of kind of attitudes towards Israel on the right are concerning.
I agree. I think J.D. Vance is one of them, the Bannon types. I don't think Vance is going to stand up. I joked to a friend of mine, remember the quaint days when people were worried about Reverend Wright and Farrakhan, that Obama might have had tea with Farrakhan and, had some affection for Reverend Wright? That's nothing compared to the relationships that J.D. Vance is going to have to explain if he runs for president. The Tucker Carlsons, the Alex Jones, the people that he's on record praising, and he's going to be asked to disassociate himself from, and he won't.
Oh, any Republican is gonna bend the knee to those people. That's what I think is the issue here. I mean, it is kind of we're in the situation where the left was in the mid 2010s when crazy people on the internet were driving everything. That's what we're seeing on the right today. You see these. This post, I don't know if you saw this congressman who went to this like Indian festival and he posted, it was nice to meet Indian Americans. you could imagine how that goes. Even Tulsi Gabbard put out a message about wishing people some happy, holiday, some Hindu holiday. It's just completely crazy. I mean, so Yeah, I mean, it is, the internet is kind of where the energy is. The left has institutions. The right doesn't have institutions. Like the left has gatekeepers, like the New York Times, like Ezra Klein. Like you have to kind of go through these steps. In the right, all you have is like the politicians, Trump, events, whatever, and like the internet. It's just so direct.
Isn't it you who always says the right doesn't read?
Yeah, exactly. They don't read anything. Exactly. There's no institutions. There's no kind of intellectual class that is between the politician and just like the unwashed masses on the internet. And that's why the unwashed masses are kind of driving this trade. And it's going to get worse after Trump is gone because Trump has this kind of leadership quality where they all follow what he does. After this, JD Vance, all these people, they're going to be completely trapped by the audience.
Although I got to tell you, the MAGA people that I know who I have had harsh words with, they read. They're well-educated, high IQ people. That's part of what astonishes me about them. Yeah,
Which megas are you talking about? I mean, like people, like is there a crowd or people we know who are you thinking?
people who I've done business with, or gone to school with, or had been friends with. They who are anti-vax and like you name it. They're anti-vax. They don't believe Biden got that many votes. Like basically everything you hear, provably false things. And as you said, and the Republicans have to bend the knee to the guy who says that he was mauled by demons and that we're studying alien weapon systems and that mRNA vaccines are a menace. And yet the policies of that side are still preferable to me than the policies that Kamala Harris would likely impose on us. So flip a coin, Richard.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the trend is in bad direction. I do think that the policies of Republicans are still better than kind of where the discourse. It's hard to be as bad as the discourse is, but I have a feeling it's going to catch up. I don't think the stupidity stays bottled up. I think it's going to infect everything.
Well, yeah, maybe it has to get worse before it gets better. All right, sir. I meant what I said. Sometimes I also had on my list, but I'm not going to do it because we've been on too long. You talk about movies and music and basically any cultural current that there is. You really are among the most interesting minds I've ever known of in my 63 years. And I'm very happy to know you. I'm still anxious to meet you in person. Can I leave you with a story, a very pro-American story?
Oh, after that, after all those compliments, you can do whatever you want. Go ahead.
And I really mean it. The last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been waking up in the middle of the night just for a second with a cough, like a cough I'd never experienced before. And, you start Googling, and of course, they tell you after 3 weeks of a new cough, it could be a symptom of lung cancer. And you've probably seen there's a lot of articles now about, I don't smoke, I never smoke, but that the non-environmental or non-smoking related lung cancer is on the rise. I have 2 generations of lung cancer in my family. Anyway, so I decide I'm worried. Let me go attend to this. Early this morning, I made the first call to try to attend to this. By noon, I had a chest x-ray and a clean bill of health from the American healthcare system, only through my health insurance, a $50 copay. I know people badmouth the American health system. I hear stories. This could be weeks in another first world country. And yeah. I maybe my experience is not the same as someone else might have, but I was just astonished. I was buckling down for at least a week or 2 of high stress waiting as the cancer grew inside me. And I thought, God bless America. It's amazing the service I got from, it was NYU Langone.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, I recently had a interesting medical experience too, where I had this like psoriasis for my entire life. I went to a doctor who told me, now all you need is an injection every 3 months and it's gone. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I've been putting creams on 5 times a day. You're telling me that's all I need? I did it. I saw that the list price of the medicine was like $20,000 per injection, literally free for me through the insurance. And 1 injection, you barely feel it and it's completely gone. I've been struggling with this problem my whole life. It's just completely disappeared. Without the kind of massive profits you can make off of something like that, you don't get that kind of innovation. So yeah, a lot of good things in America still. I mean, they're worth fighting for.
I would bet on America over every other country in the world now in a heartbeat. I don't imagine China. I think it'll collapse on its own weight in some way. Not that it's going to disappear, but I just don't believe I think our diversity, I hate to say it, is our strength.
Mm.
And I think our orneriness and our freedom and our system, and I just can't imagine another country really giving us a run for our money. And Europe is a basket case. So that's how I feel about it. I'm very
we don't want to just beat Europe and China. I mean, we want a great future. It might be, if that's our goal, that might be easy, right? I think we want something even better than that. But you're absolutely right. I agree with the sentiment.
All right, Richard Hanania, thank you very, very much. Any plans to come to New York?
I'm going to the DC for the Abundance Conference in early September, so I'll be close. What's that? Yeah, with Ezra Klein. Yeah, I could ask him about your your concerns. Yeah,
if you come a bit north, call me up.
Absolutely. We'll
treat you tonight at the Comedy Cellar. I would love that. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Ezra. Thanks, Richard. Bye.
Thanks.
You know how to do it. Wait till it says you can. It's not your first rodeo. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have to end it first. Yeah. Yeah. So whoever's listening, you've got to stop it now.